The Second Battle of Sirte was a naval engagement in which the escorting warships of a British convoy to Malta frustrated a much more powerful Regia Marina squadron. The British convoy was composed of 4 merchant ships escorted by 4 light cruisers, 1 anti-aircraft cruiser, and 17 destroyers. The Italian force comprised a battleship, 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, and 8 destroyers. Despite the initial British success at warding off the Italian squadron, the battle delayed the convoy's planned arrival before dawn, which exposed it to intense air attacks that sank all 4 merchant ships and 1 of the escorting destroyers in the following days. The battle occurred on the 22nd of March 1942, in the Mediterranean, north of the Gulf of Sirte and southeast of Malta, during the Second World War. Background: Malta had long been a major factor in British successes against Italian convoys to North Africa, and in return became the target of an increasing number of heavy Axis air raids. By early 1942, however, the Allies lost the initiative in the central Mediterranean as Italian and German forces gained the upper hand in their attempts to isolate in Malta, and even made plans to remove it as a threat. Indeed, after a series of Allied setbacks changed the overall scenario, the Italians achieved naval superiority over their enemies by spring 1942. As Malta was running short of aircraft, anti-aircraft guns, fuel, food and ammunition, convoy MW-10 sailed from Alexandria on the 21st of March. The British expected opposition from German and Italian aircraft as well as Italian surface units. In December 1941, the 2 battleships stationed in the eastern Mediterranean had been disabled by an attack by Italian frogmen, and so their Alexandria squadron consisted only of cruisers and destroyers. Meanwhile, a diversion was organized from Gibraltar. On the morning of the 20th of March, the battleship Malaya, with the aircraft carriers Eagle and Argus, supported by the cruiser Himalayan 8 destroyers, set sail from the Rock. The next day, the squadron aborted the operation and returned to port. The carriers were unable to fly off aircraft reinforcements to Malta due to defective, long-range fuel tanks. The escort of convoy MW-10 relied heavily on destroyers, including lighter-built destroyer escorts, to provide anti-submarine protection and included the anti-aircraft cruiser Carlisle to bolster the convoy's anti-aircraft capability. Additional destroyers and another light cruiser were also sent from Malta. British defensive plan. Admiral Sir Philip Vere, commanding the convoy, organized his ships into 6 divisions plus a close escort for the convoy of 5 Hunt-class destroyers. 1st Division, destroyers Jervis, Kipling, Kelvin and Kingston. 2nd Division, light cruisers Dido and Penelope with the destroyer Legion. 3rd Division, destroyers Zulu and Hasty. 4th Division, light cruisers Cleopatra and Euryalus. 5th Division, destroyers Seek, Lively, Hero and Havoc. 6th Division, anti-aircraft cruiser Carlisle and Hunt-class destroyer Avonvale. In case of an Italian surface attack, the first 5 divisions were to stand off from the convoy to face the enemy while the 6th Division laid smoke across the wake of the convoy to obscure it from the enemy. The first 5 divisions would act as a rearguard to lay smoke and delay the enemy while Carlisle and the Hunt-class destroyers proceeded with the cargo ships to Malta. The battle At 14:30 the next day, the British were faced by a pair of heavy cruisers and escorting destroyers. Admiral Vian immediately implemented his plan. The cargo ships and escorts turned away to the south while the light cruisers and remaining destroyers laid smoke and charged the Italians. After an exchange of fire, the two Italian heavy cruisers backed off in an attempt to lure the British toward the incoming main Italian squadron, and at 16:37 they returned to attack with the battleship Littorio, a light cruiser, and the screening destroyers. The battle raged for 2.5 hours, with the British ships leaving the safety of the huge smokescreen to fire a few volleys and then returning to it when the Italian salvos got too close. During one of these exchanges, Havoc suffered heavy damage from a near-miss when fired at by the Italian battleship, and was ordered to withdraw from the battle line and join the convoy. At 18:34, Vian decided to send his destroyers in to launch torpedo attacks from about 5,000 yards, the closest the Italians would allow the British to approach. None of the torpedoes found their target, but as Kingston turned she was hit hard by a round which penetrated her boiler room, ignited a fire and temporarily brought her to a halt. The battle began with a 25 knots wind blowing to the northwest, with the wind continuing to increase during the day, a factor which favored the gunnery of the larger Italian ships throughout the battle. But the direction of the wind aided the laying of smokescreens by Vian's ships. Lively was also struck by shell splinters from the battleship's main guns that pierced a bulkhead, causing some flooding but no casualties. Right at the end of the action, at 18:55, Littorio had been hit by a 4.7-inch shell, with negligible damage. Her floatplane caught fire from the blast from a salvo of her after-turret at the same time. This led to the claim by the British that one of the torpedoes struck home. At dusk, about 1900, the Italians gave up and turned for home. Without radar, they would have been at a significant disadvantage in a night action, as in the Battle of Cape Matapan. The Italians outgunned the British counterparts, but they appeared unwilling to close for a decisive blow, perhaps wary of the torpedo threat from the numerically superior British destroyer force. Battle damage. According to British reports, HMS Cleopatra was struck on the afterpart of the bridge at 16:44 by a 152 mm hit from the light cruiser Giovanni d'Albanera. 16 seamen were killed. Cruisers Euryalus and Penelope were also damaged, with Euryalus straddled by Littorio at 16:43 and at 18:41. Kingston was hit amidships by a shell from Littorio that killed 15 men of her crew, and left the destroyer dead in the water, with her starboard whaleboat torn apart, her anti-aircraft guns, searchlight tower and torpedo launchers shattered by the explosion. Some sources claim that she was hit by the guns of the heavy cruiser Gorizia. Although Kingston had an engine in flames and a flooded boiler, she managed, however, to recover speed, reaching Malta the next day. Havoc was also badly damaged in a boiler by Littorio near miss at 17:20, suffering 8 deaths. Lively was forced to retreat to Tobruk for repairs at 18:55 after a near miss from Littorio's aft turret holed her hull, resulting in some flooding. 3 more destroyers, Sikh, Legion and Lance, suffered lesser damage from 8 cruiser fire. The Italian fleet expended 1,511 rounds of all calibers upon the British squadron. The only Italian destroyer to open fire was Avia. The British cruisers had replied with 1,553 rounds and the destroyers with about 1,300 rounds, as well as 38 torpedoes. Axis aircraft made continual attacks, mainly against the convoy. Throughout the naval action, and Royal Navy AA gunners claimed the destruction of 7 Axis aircraft and damage to several more. Follow-up actions. Most of the escort force, now short of fuel and ammunition due to the protracted engagement and unable to find the convoy, turned back for Alexandria. The damaged destroyers and the cargo ships were sent on to Malta, with Carlisle, Penelope and Legion. The next day, they were subjected to continuous air attacks. The cargo ship Clan Campbell was sunk 20 miles from harbour, and the oil tanker Breconshire was too damaged to reach Valletta. Nonetheless, the other two merchantmen, Talbot and steamer Pampas, reached Malta's Grand Harbour virtually unharmed. Pampas had been hit by 2 bombs, but these failed to explode. Penelope attempted to tow Breconshire, but the tow parted in heavy seas. She anchored short of the protective minefields, and the destroyer Southwold attempted to take her in tow, hitting a mine in the process. She was eventually towed into Marsax's Lock Bay by tugs. Intense Axis air raids against Malta on 24-25 March failed to damage the 3 surviving convoy ships. However, on the 26th of March, German dive bombers scored bomb hits on all 3 ships, sinking Talbot and Pampas that day, with Breconshire capsizing on the 27th of March. Much of Breconshire's oil was salvaged through the hole in her hull. Only about 5,000 short tons of cargo had been unloaded, of the 26,000 short tons that had been loaded in Alexandria. The Italian fleet units were no more lucky after the battle. After failing to destroy the convoy by themselves, they were caught en route to the bases by a severe storm that sank the destroyers Sirocco and Lancier. While under repair and dry docked in Malta, Kingston was attacked a few days later by German aircraft and suffered further damage, this time beyond repair. She was scrapped in Malta in the following months. Assessments. Almost all sources with an opinion on the matter have assessed the battle as a British victory, credited to the escort of light cruisers and destroyers which successfully prevented the Italians from inflicting any damage whatsoever on the convoy by staving off an Italian squadron, composed of a battleship and 2 heavy cruisers, while fending off heavy Axis air attacks. On the other hand, some authors, while generally acknowledging the British success, write of the battle as a partial Italian achievement in delaying and turning the convoy aside. Nearly all sources acknowledge the Italian fleet inflicted significant damage and several casualties on the British squadron while suffering minimal damage and no casualties in return. The action, however, represented a failure on the Italians' part to exploit their advantage and destroy the convoy. Indeed, they were unable to sink or cripple a single cargo ship. This was due to Admiral Vin's vigorous and skillful defense in the face of a superior adversary. The overwhelming strength of the Italian fleet was not fully exploited by Admiral Lucchino, also because bad weather and lack of radar prevented him from continuing the pursuit of the convoy at dusk. But when the main objective, to resupply Malta, is included in the assessment, the outcome is different. The British intention to reach Malta before dawn with a substantial escort was disrupted by the intervention of the Italian Navy. This left the cargo ships exposed to Axis air supremacy. Thereafter, Italian and German aircraft caught the British convoy at sea and chased the surviving steamers to the harbour. More than 80% of the supplies were lost. The British convoy operation was, therefore, a strategic failure. Order of battle. Italy. Admiral Angelo Lucchino, 1 battleship. Littorio, 6 destroyers. Alfredo Oriani, Ascari, Avier, Genia, Greco, Sirocco. 2nd Division. Admiral Perona, 2 heavy cruisers. Gorizia, Trento. 1 light cruiser. Giovanni del Bandera, 4 destroyers. Alpino, Passaggia, Fuciliera, Lancier. Submarine, Platino, United Kingdom. Carlisle Squadron, 1 C-class light cruiser, Carlisle, 5th Destroyer Flotilla from Tobruk, Southwold, Beaufort, Dulverton, Haworth, Avonvale, Eridge. 4 cargo ships, Clan Campbell, Breconshire, Pampas and Talbot. 15th Cruiser Squadron, 3 light cruisers, Dido, Euryalus, Cleopatra. 14th Destroyer Flotilla, Jervis, Kipling, Gelvin, Kingston. 22nd Destroyer Flotilla, Hasty, Havoc, Hero, Lively, Seek, Zulu. Support Squadron from Malta, 1 cruiser, Penelope, 1 destroyer, Legion. 3 submarines, Unbeaten, Upholder and Ultimatum. Submarine based in Alexandria, Proteus.